All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. I was just getting organized, sending the links to everyone all over the place. If you're not subscribed to the newsletter, you should. This is where I would send the links. I put them on LinkedIn as well, but typically LinkedIn would limit the reach of posts when you put a link, so I have to put it in the comments, and I don't know what it's like. I don't know if it gets delivered. People see these comments or not. Anyway, so I'll just do a quick introduction of what we do in the live stream as usual. But I should probably start with the typical question of, do you guys see me, hear me, and see my screen? Gotta make sure that everything is working as expected. Perfect. All right. Let's do a quick introduction, and then we can get started with today's project. So basically, in this live stream, I'll be taking use cases, explaining concepts, answering questions, any of that. If you have a topic that you would like us to discuss, a use case that you would like us to build together, feel free to send them to me on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on email, on Slack, anywhere, and then we'll cover them in future sessions. If you have any questions throughout the live stream, feel free to ask them right away. And I prepare things for the session in case nobody has a question or a use case to cover. So I will always have something ready to share with you, something interesting, something that I stumbled into recently, new releases, things like that. The use case that I have for today is from the website Camp Apex, which is meant for developers writing Apex, but we're not doing that. We're actually building whatever we have in here in flows, which also a good thing to look at. What flows can do. So you look at what Apex can do, and then you realize that pretty much 90% of it can be done with flows. There's definitely differences and reasons to choose one over the other. The purpose of this one is flows, so we're gonna do that with flows. You can navigate to campapex.org. Let me see if I can send that in the chat. Yeah, so you can navigate to campapex.org, and you might need to log in. I think because I already logged in, the view is like this. Okay, I'm actually logged out, which is good. So you can log in. You're gonna need a developer org if you don't already have one, and then you can just put the link to that org in here and then connect. It's gonna log in and authorize, and then return back to Camp Apex. If you haven't done this already, feel free to follow along if you want to. If you just want to watch this, it's up to you. Now, there is, if you're learning Apex, feel free to explore the entire website, but I'm just focusing on the use cases. So under projects tab, there is a project called Event Cloud, Event Management System, where we can build triggered flows, Apex triggers. I think the focus of this is Apex, but again, we're just going to do everything in flows. I'm gonna start this project, and here in the first lesson or first topic, it's gonna share the data model, and understanding the data model is very important. So this is coming ready out of the box. You don't have to build all of these fields and all of these objects. These are like coming out of the box. I don't know if I need the headset. I don't think I need the headset. So this is available right away. Once you get to one of the lessons, you're gonna have a link to. I think once you get to the lesson, the first user story, which I think this is the one, the link is gonna show up here to install the package. Because I already did, I think it doesn't show up anymore, but it's here. Let me know if you don't find it. Maybe I can just try a different org. Okay, let's go back to the first lesson, which is the onboarding, project onboarding. This is where we see the data model. And I'm gonna just like spend 1 minute looking at this. But just before we do that, after you install the package, you're gonna find this event cloud application in here. If you don't see it in here, of course, you can click view all, and it's gonna show up somewhere in here. So this is event cloud after you install this. So I already installed this before the stream so that we just can save some time. But now looking at this, we have a few objects. We have events, sponsors, session attendees, and attendees. And looking at this, let's see what we have. We have an object called event, and then this is a parent of another object called sponsor. So this is a sponsor of the event. I'm not going to look at every field. I just want a high level understanding of what's going on there. So we can have multiple sponsors under one event, and we can also have multiple sessions in one event. And for each session, we have a list of attendees. Now this here is a junction object. The moment you see like two lookup fields like this, or if you can look at the relationship arrow, and you see that this is one parent and this is another parent to one object. So this is immediately a junction object, meaning it represents many-to-many relationships. And from a design perspective, if I were to put the data model together, the moment you see that you need, like you have two pieces of information, like a session and attendee, and you need to log something like a session attendee. And it does seem like for every session, like now this is how it works. Like if this, the statement that I'm going to say next happens to be said by a customer, or like it occurs in your thoughts, then you know that you need a many-to-many relationships. For every session, there is multiple attendees, or for every attendee, like, or maybe one attendee can attend multiple sessions. So for object A, we need multiple of object B, or for object B, we need multiple of object A. If that's the case, then this calls for a junction object or a many-to-many relationships. So the attendee object here is actually mimicking the contact object. You see it has first name, last name, email, which is almost identical to a contact object. Makes me wonder why we didn't just use the contact object in here. So this is the same thing as a contact object. We'll use it because it's part of the package, but this is similar to a contact object. So this is the data model. The next lesson is just, I think it's Git. We're not gonna use Git for this stream. And then moving forward, this is the first user story now. Feel free to try these things on your own, think about them, and we'll be building. Like if you wanna try on your own and then review this, have questions, if you wanna follow along, if you just wanna watch this, it's up to you. Reading through the user story as an event coordinator, like I can look at the acceptance criteria right away, but sometimes you wanna have a broader understanding of what's going on. So you can read the user story if you want. Just for the purpose of time, I'm gonna skip to the acceptance criteria. When a new event, I'm gonna read event, I'm not gonna read all of this. When a new event record is created, the status field should reflect the planning pick list value. So when an event gets created, the status should be planning. So defaulting the status to this. Even though we know we're thinking flows now, but like it's important to think outside of flows. The answer to a solution is not always flows. You can set a default value at the field level. You can set a default value at the field level. So at this point, I would ask a question like, if an end user is sending me this exact requirement, I'd like this to happen, then I would ask, why would I use flow instead of a default value at the field level, or why would I do the opposite? I'm just like sharing a consultant view of things, a business analyst view of things, not just yes, let's do that and we'll go ahead and do it. Of course, for the case of practicing this, we're going to go ahead and do it, but I'm just calling this out. Now, let's go ahead and just pretend that we create an event manually to see where the status is, what the status values are, before we actually go ahead and build. If I were to go ahead and create a new event, I'll see that I need to provide an event name, and then there is a status here. The status doesn't have a value by default, so we need to default this to planning using flows, not using field level configuration. Sometimes you do want to default it to planning at the field level if you want every record to default to this. But sometimes if you use flows, one of the cases where I would use flows instead is if someone intentionally leaves this blank, maybe they forgot to set it to some value, then maybe set it to something else. Or maybe you can make it dependent on some other value. So if it's like if the date is in the future, then the user left the status blank, then set it to planning. If it is in the if someone is creating an event in the past, and then they forgot to set the status field, then set it to completed. The reason I am sharing all of this is that a requirement is not necessarily the right thing. Like if someone is saying we need X, it doesn't mean that this is the right thing. We need to understand why from a business perspective we're doing this, and not just like go and build right away. Okay, now we're gonna go and build right away without understanding the reasons behind all of this. We would like to set the status to planning whenever an event gets created. Let's go ahead and build a flow for this. I'm gonna go to the gear icon and then edit object. When building record triggered flows, I prefer to navigate in this manner. Go to the object itself and then flow triggers and then new flow. This helps me skip a couple of steps. The new flow, the start from template, and then select the object. All of this is selected automatically, and the flow type. So it already started a record triggered flow, add the event object automatically and everything. So I like this, reading through the requirements when a record is created. When a record is created. So we can follow along, but a mindset to have is to ask, what if it gets updated to some other, like someone updates something where the status is not set, or someone updates the status from pending to some other value? Should things happen in automatically in that situation? Probably. So it's just a question I would ask or think about at least. For now, we're just going to follow what the requirement is. Whenever a record gets created, and the status field should reflect planning. Now, there is something that's kind of hidden, like it's not exactly being said explicitly here. When you create a new event, you might populate the status to say active, so event. If I were to create something like this, following the exact wording in the requirement, it's going to change from active to planning. We don't want that to happen. We would like it to be set to planning only if the user left it blank or some other value. And it seems like this is the case. Like when it is left blank, maybe if we read the user story, then when a newly created event record into a planning status, so that we can start the event organization process with a clear initial state that indicates the event is in the early stages of planning. Also, I mean, even though this user story is, like it looks good, we always need to think about what if. There is an assumption here that this is a newly created event. The assumption here is that this event hasn't happened yet. Sometimes we need to go back in time, not go back in time, but create an event for an event that actually took place. So we need to run an event tomorrow. We're too busy. We haven't logged it into the system. We actually attended the event and did the event and everything, and we're good. And then 2 days later, we managed to free some time and we need to log that information. So the event already took place like 2 days ago. Someone is just like backfilling that information. So I would add like a piece of acceptance criterion here that says only when the status is left blank. So when an event gets created and the status field is left blank, doesn't have a value, someone forgot or left it blank intentionally, then this is when we would set the value to planning. So let's do that. So when a record gets created, and I'm going to add a condition down here where the status is is null true. Is null true, meaning it's null, meaning it doesn't have a value. And in regards to optimize the flow for fast field updates or actions and related records, this is another topic, but just briefly right now, my rule of thumb is go with fast field updates, like 100% of the time. If it doesn't let you do what you're trying to do, then you know that you need to move to actions and related records. The difference between these two, I'm happy to talk about them. I have an entire video, 2 videos about these 2 topics on my channel if you want to check these out. Or maybe like after we work a little bit on the project, maybe we can talk more about this. So the rule of thumb, fast field updates, let's go with that. So someone created a new event. It's a new event. The status is left blank. It's running in fast field updates. Now, when that happens, what would we like to do? We need to set the status to planning. To do that, we can use an assignment element. If you're using fast field updates and you're trying to update the record that triggered this flow, you use an assignment element and you don't use an update element. There is no need to use an update element. The reason is it's running before save, meaning it hasn't gone to the database yet. So you don't need to retrieve it to perform a change and then send it to the database again. You're basically, it's like the flow when you create a new event. And then like the moment you click save, it's like the flow came to the screen and went to the pick list and changed it to planning before it goes to the database. I'm just like making something up, but you know, this is basically got updated before saving to the database. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an assignment element. Let's say assign planning status. And then the triggering record is here, triggering camp event. And or you can search for the global variable record. That's actually the API name. If you hover on this exclamation mark, you will see that the API name is the $sign and then record. So you can search for the keyword record and then it's going to show up, or you can search for triggering the label. It's going to show up either way. And then on the triggering record, the triggering event would like to set the status to planning. And that's it. You don't need to use an update element when you use a before save flow. Let's save this. Set planning status for new events. You want to be explanatory with labels and whatnot so that you don't have to write descriptions. If the label is not explaining enough, or maybe you wrote a very long label and it still needs more explanation, then the description field is meant for that. Let's save and let's debug before we actually launch it and activate it. Let's select just any event in the system. Is the one that I created earlier? Yeah. Okay, so this is one that I created just a minute ago, and it has the status of active. Let's actually select that and then run it. And the expected behavior, now like 2 questions, like what is the expected behavior? What is the actual behavior? Like you almost always want to ask these 2 questions. It's the expected behavior. What's the actual behavior? The expected behavior is that the status changes. In this particular case, the status is already set, and we built the flow to only run when the status is left blank or when the status is null. So this record does not meet the conditions. So the expectation is that the flow does not run because this record does not meet the conditions. And this is what happened. It didn't run. How the interview started. Start condition requirements. All conditions must be true. It didn't run. You see, like the assignment element is not listed in here. So this flow has not run. These would be colored if it ran. Let's edit this and change it to no value. And let's try to run this again. Now, the expectation is that it does run because the status is null or blank. Let's debug again. Select the same record and then run. Now this is working as expected. Now I see the assignment in here in the debug logs and the debug details. And I see now this is the assignment. This is what the values that got assigned are, and then this is the result. So we are assigning the keyword planning to the status field, and the result is that it got assigned. Let's activate this, and let's try it live. Let's go ahead and create a new event, copy event, and let's save. And the status is set to planning. So this is good. We completed the first challenge. Let's go to the next challenge. And also, I'm gonna skip to the acceptance criteria right away. When the status field of an event record is edited, the status change date field should capture the current date time. So when someone updates the status field of an event, we need to set the current date time on the status change date. Let's look at that status change date. Status change date. What data type is this? So I'm asking this question because typically when you work with date and time, you need to know, are you setting a date, or are you setting a date time? Is it from a date, or is it from a date time? So that if there is conversion to be done or extraction to be done, like extract the date from a date time that we need to do, then we need to know what the data types are. So I need to know what the data type of this status change date. And when I click the edit, the time shows up and the date. So this is the date time field. So basically, when someone adds this status from this value to some other value, we need to set the status change date in here. Let's go ahead and create another record triggered flow. There is the whole conversation around, should we have one record triggered flow per object or multiple, which is my preference is to do multiple with very tight entry criteria. I think it's more clear to do that because everyone has its own name. But I mean, like, there is a list of reasons. Like I wrote about that before. Maybe a topic we can dive deeper into at a later time. Okay, I'm just closing tabs. I don't like many tabs now. Let's. This is a new record triggered flow now, and let's think about the entry criteria. This time, when a record is edited. So, and even like the field name is change date. So this should only happen when a change happens. When you create a new record, this is not a change. Even though it does sound in our minds that it is a change. Like for example, if you create a new record and you set a name, prior to that point there was no name, and now there is a name, so it's a change. Maybe it works mentally, but this is not a change. Rather, it doesn't trigger things in Salesforce. Like if you create a new record and you use the operator is changed equals true on create, like when a new record gets created, it doesn't consider it a change. A change means this had a previous value and now it does have a new value. And the previous value might be blank, but maybe not null. Anyway, okay, so when it gets edited, so we're gonna set this when a record is updated only. And what exactly gets edited when the status field gets edited. So I'm gonna set this to, I'm gonna select the status field, and I will use the operator is changed true. So whenever the status field changes, then this flow is going to run. This condition here is equivalent to the following. Let's select formula for a second, and we select the record. If I search for record, I'm going to see two things: the global variable record and the global variable record prior. So this is the value before the change, and this is the value after the change. The entire record with its values after the change and then prior to the change. So if you change the status from planning to active, and then prior is going to contain the value planning, and the record is going to contain the value active. So if I select this and I select status, and I select does not equal, and then this status. So what we wrote here is if the prior status does not equal the new status, that condition is the same thing as this condition. Status is changed true. And we're going to select fast field updates as well. We set the conditions just fine. Now we need to set the current date time on the field status change date. And I don't like this way of naming things. It's just my personal opinion. This is called status change date. I would rather name this API status change date time, even if it's not convenient for, or as in like long. I'd rather name it status change date time, so that when someone looks at that field, they don't have to go and look what the data type of this is, but rather they can tell immediately that this is a field of data type date time. Similarly, Salesforce has the name created date. I don't like it. I would rather created date time. But I mean, it's just maybe I feel like it's just a personal opinion, because I'm sure Salesforce know what they're doing. Probably. Okay. All right. So we set the conditions. Now we can go ahead and set the datetime value on the change status date. We're gonna use an assignment as well, and let's say assign change status date. And that's the triggering record, similar to what we did before. Now we just need to change, get the status. I get it wrong. Status change date. Status change date. I would like. It's important to be consistent with naming. I know it's a minor thing, but someone might ask, "Is that a different field?" Or just in case. So status change date, we're gonna set it to current date time. And in flows, we have a global variable, a bunch of global variables. We can talk about all of them later, but for now, one of them is running flow interview. The API name is flow. So if I search for flow, it's going to show up. If I just search for interview, it's going to show up. Running flow interview, and it gives me some values out of the box, such as current date time. We can save this, and let's say set current date time on status change date. And another thing that I like to do as well when naming things like this is the name of the object first. We're running this record triggered flow on the event object, so you can do this on the flow. The flows list view, you can add a column to show the objects just fine, but in some other places in the system, such as pulling a report or like looking at them in an IDE or something, any place where you would look at the API name rather than a list view, then maybe this would be helpful for you to know which object it's running on. Okay, let's save. Let's just repeat the same couple of steps now. Let's try to be quick with these. Okay, we're gonna select any event. Now, because this flow is running on update, then it's gonna show me the fields to let me perform an update. I'm not going to perform an update, and I'm going to run. You remember when you test that you need to always do two types of testing, a positive test case and a negative test case. When the user updates, like what we're building is when the user updates the status field, then this should happen. You also need to do the test to the opposite. When the user does not update it, I need to make sure that this does not run. So we need to always test positively and negatively. So I'm going to test the negative test case first. So I'm not going to perform a change. And now the expected behavior is that nothing happens. The change status field does not get updated. Let's do that. It doesn't get triggered altogether, which is good. Now let's debug again. And this time let's perform a change on the status field to active. Now this should, the expectation is that the status change date gets updated. If I run this, it does get updated. Let's read the logs. It does get updated to today's date. Let's activate and run this test in the actual environment. Of course, these things we build in sandboxes, of course. Okay, what we're doing, changing this to active and saving. So the status change date gets updated to current date time. So we completed the second challenge. Before I move on to the third challenge, do you guys have any questions? Do you see any problems? Are you following along? Are you just watching? Or you just are reviewing the stream on your phone and then you just left to do something else? I do that sometimes. Awesome. No news is good news. No questions means that everybody understands. What's the difference between system date and flow date? When you say flow date, I know you're referring to the global variable flow date, but then what's system date? As in like a formula today date, perhaps? Oh, or maybe you're referring to the other global variable system. Is there such a thing? Is there a global variable for system? Let me just look at system origin. Is that? I don't feel like this is what you're asking about. I have no idea what that is, to be honest with you. Origin date time. Maybe this is the date time the org was created. Probably, I'm not sure. But if your question is about the formula, if we were to create a new formula, we can enter a function called today, which returns current date. They are the same thing. Today and the today function in a formula and the flow global variable flow current date are the same thing. There is another function called now. It does return a date time. So like now is the equivalent of the global variable flow current date time. Today is the equivalent of global variable flow date. How to trigger a flow when a case gets added to a case queue. Well, the queue is an assignment. That's the owner field. So I would. The question is how to trigger a flow when a case gets added to a case queue. The queue is like a user. When you assign a case to a user, it's being assigned to a queue and then it gets assigned to a user. So I would experiment with this later, but as of now, I would run a triggered a record triggered flow on a change on the owner field. So if the owner field changes from some value to the queue, and I know that you can get the queue object, it would be under group, the object group, and then the type fields would be queue. I don't know if I'm getting things right. Yeah, so the queue is basically like everything in Salesforce is an object, is a table. Like Salesforce is just like a big Excel sheet. So this is just like one way to get the group information. So I would set this to the case object. And I think it's just like any other object, and then the owner field, and then is changed true. So this means that the assigned person or queue got changed, but then we're gonna need more information of the name of the queue. Maybe we can get the queue first and then get the developer name of the queue, and then when the assignment on the case gets changed to the queue with that name, then trigger the flow. I know it's not a full answer, but like I would start from there. Let me know if you'd like us to if you can give us more context on the business use case and a little bit more detail, and then maybe you can prepare this for next time, or maybe discuss a little bit further throughout this stream. Right. Let's move forward to the next challenge. I'm keeping an eye on the chat. I look to the side, just like looking at the all the windows that I have to open for this stream to be running. So like I'm looking here on the camera, and then this is the all the other stuff. Okay, let's resume the challenge, and I'm keeping an eye on the chat if you have questions. All right, we did this one. Moving forward. Defaulting sponsor status to pending on creation. So it's similar when a sponsor is created and the status is blank. You see, this time this is a better way to write it, because when the user is intentionally leaving the status to blank, it should set the sponsor status to pending, which is almost identical to what we did at the event level. So I'm just going to skip this requirement. It's like the exact same thing, but on a different object. When a sponsor record is created without a value in email, the user should see an error stating a sponsor cannot be created without an email address. This one is good because this is fairly recent in Salesforce to have a validation message from flows. Before that, we used the validation rules extensively, and I don't use validation rules anymore. Like 99% of the time, I don't use validation rules. From now on, it's before save flows with a display error. I'm going to show you this now. I would use a validation rule, or maybe like not create a new one, but only if one that already exists in a system that we don't typically want to change it without a strategy and a plan. But typically, I don't do that anymore. Let's go ahead and do that. When a sponsor is created without a value in email, let's just start with this. Let's just break it down to a couple of things: the entry criteria and then the actual logic. Let's work with the criteria first. When a sponsor gets created, now this is another object here, the sponsors. I'll go to the object. And flow triggers and new flow. I'll just show you the display error very quickly, and then we will build the whole thing. So it just, what is it? Is it called error? It's called custom error, not display error. So custom error is the action that you would use to display an error, and work is very similar to validation rules. I'm going to show you this in a second. Let's get back to the entry criteria. This is running on the sponsor object. I will ask the question: is it on create or on update on delete? Look in here when it gets created without a value in email. When it gets created without a value in email. So if someone is going to update, yeah, I mean, that sounds good. Assuming that this is a new org and no records in the system that don't have, like no records in the system without emails. So every record has an email. Maybe moving forward, that's fine. But if a record already exists, a sponsor record already exists in the system without an email, and someone edits that record and then leaves the email blank, should we display the message in that case or not? It seems to be intentional that we don't want this to happen, to allow them to save an existing record that's missing an email. So this does sound to be intentional, which is fine. So we're going to go with created only. And we need to add a condition where the email is left blank. And this is similar to what we did before. The email field is left blank. I'm sorry, what am I doing? Is null. True. I wouldn't, again, I'm thinking about the design. Using the email field add the sponsor object is not, maybe like this whole thing is just meant for practice. But I mean, the email is basically one of the information that you have for the contact, and the contact is its own object. So I would use a lookup relationship between the sponsor. So when you create a sponsor and you select a contact, where does the email live? It lives at the email at the email level, not at the sponsor level. So that if the email, like, assume that this person sponsored 5 events. Now they have 5 sponsored records, and then they change emails. The old email doesn't work anymore, and then they change it to a new email. Are you going to all 5 sponsored records to update the email? No, you just update it once at the contact level, which means it got updated automatically on all the 5 ones. If you were to use a lookup relationship instead of using an email at the sponsored level. So just a design thing. But we're working what we have. We're working what you have. Um, so we're working with what we have. When the email is left, now we're gonna set this to fast field updates as well, the usual, and we need to display that error now. Someone like left is creating a sponsor, leaving the email blank, and then we need to show them that error. So let's set the custom error outside display error, and it works similar to validation rules where you can make it show up top, or you can make it display below. I think it's below a certain field. So we need this to show up below the email field, and the message that they provided us is here. So we're just gonna grab this. No, here. And that's like, another beautiful thing is, like, maybe you can, if you want to display 2 errors, like one error on one field, and then maybe like display the same, let's actually display the same error twice, once at the top and once on the field. And let's save this, and let's say um, alert user to populate email, and that's on the sponsor object. Let's debug. Let's activate and just look at this right away. Let's go ahead and create a sponsor, and some sponsor. Another good thing to do here is to automate the sponsor name, like grab whatever name of the person, and even the sponsor name. This is supposed to be the contact name, not the sponsor name is like the name of this record, but there should be a lookup to the contact record. And if we have a lookup to the contact record, then we could automate the name of this record so that the person doesn't have to enter their name in here. Anyway, so we're leaving the email blank, which should alert us to populate the email. Let's save this. It looks like that's the error that I was saying shows up at the top. It doesn't exactly show up at the top. Looks like it shows up down here. Okay. It's, you know what? Now that I think about it, I think this is not good. I mean, it's redundant. Maybe we just display it once. And another design thing as well. I mean, like a sponsor, there wouldn't be a sponsor without an event. Like, I think so. A sponsor of an event. I think like they go hand in hand. So we're thinking. I hate master detail relationships, but that sounds like sponsor and event go hand in hand. So there can't be a sponsor without event, unless there can be a sponsor without an event. In that case, I would use a lookup relationship instead, and maybe we create another before save flow or fast and field updates flow to display an error to populate the event as well. But anyway, we got this display error working just fine, and that's this challenge as well. Reading through your comments. Can't delete a record is a common use case for the validation rule in Apex. You can create a validation, but custom validation. I'm not following Sean. If you can elaborate a little bit on the validation part. Can't delete a record is a common use case for validation. Not like you mean like a validation to stop them from deleting a record? What to delete? I mean, Apex can generally do more things that flows can't. Sorry. Do you run these? Yeah, I run these sessions every week. I'm trying. Like right now, I stick to it. I've been doing it for a few weeks now, and I'm planning to continue doing it every Saturday, unless something happens. So yes, every Saturday at the same time. When do we prefer using Apex triggers instead of flows? The $1 million question. I have many views on this, and so let's start with a few different perspectives. One of them is a very big one, which is performance. Apex is faster than flows. There was a chart that was being shared all over the place that shows the difference in performance between Apex and flows generally, like not like a specific way of building things, but Apex is generally fast. I know we're talking milliseconds, but the reason this is important is there are different types of orgs. One org has just like 10 users. Another org might have 5,000 users. One org has like 10,000 records. Another org would have millions of records. So performance, when you think about just 10 records, it doesn't matter a few milliseconds. But when you have 50 million records and 5,000 users and whatnot, then we're talking that every second matters. And this is the kind of place where Apex takes preference. There are some other considerations as well. But this is, I mean, this is like my humble opinion on this. I'll resume this. So this is the first thing, the performance side of things. Another thing is ease of use, ease of build, ease of use, and ease of maintenance. All of these three things. And I did work on maybe like about I think I'm at about 50 projects now in my career, and the times that I needed to use Apex were very few, almost non-existent. Not because there was not exactly a need, but because the need for ease of use and ease of maintenance was more important and more significant than the performance. There would be, and I know there would be cases where the performance outweighs the need for ease of maintenance. An organization, for example, might have the budget to have in-house developers. They have the budget to just work with a Salesforce partner all the time. For them, it doesn't matter. Like they have a developer all the time. In that case, they would rather have performance over anything else. But I'm coming from the perspective of working with nonprofits in particular, and nonprofits can't. I mean, many of them can't do that, especially the startups. Flows offer you the ability to maintain and edit and build easier than Apex. And I know some people even would argue with that point that they are very experienced with Apex and they find it easier to build than flows. But I'm not talking about these people. I'm not talking about experienced developers. I'm talking about end users. Remember, when building anything, the end user must be in mind. Who's the people that are going to use the system must be in mind. And let's say, for example, I'm working with a nonprofit that don't have someone who is a tech savvy. Like there is no IT team or department altogether. Then I mean, like I might not even consider all the other factors that go into the difference between Apex and flows. The answer is flows. We're going flows. And even if they have a requirement that requires Apex or maybe any programming, then I would urge them to have a UI that allows them to edit the code, so that, because we know that in one, businesses change all the time. I know that they're not going to change this. They are going to need to make some change, and they can't make a change in code. So we need to give them ways to adjust the code. Things like using custom metadata, using custom objects for configuration, building a custom Lightning Web component where you can edit the frequency, edit something here and there. So ways like a UI to allow them to edit the code without having to edit the code. This is the extreme scenario, but I would rather go with flows. Another thing is the budget. Typically, I mean, I think this is changing, but I used to think that custom development, or maybe it still is, custom development costs more than just a declarative development. You look at the Salesforce admin salaries and expectations. A Salesforce admin nowadays is expected to build flows, and their salary is typically lower than a Salesforce developer. So does the customer have the budget to have a Salesforce developer to build and then maintain this? So if they don't have the budget, then it's better to go with flows. If they do have the budget, then going with code is important as well. So we talked about performance, ease of use, and budget. There is the item of clarity, and this is something that I advocate for all the time. And I know that people that write code can be very clear with their code. But the thing is, if you show code to an end user who hasn't looked at code before, it's not exactly easy to digest. But if you take a screen flow and you show them to an end user who has never looked at any logic or code before, they are more likely to understand what's going on. And I've done this before with people who don't have much knowledge about, they don't know any code, and they could edit flows. They could understand at least where things are going, where things are happening, where the errors are generating from. So this is another thing to make me think about flows. So this is just for considerations. I know this is a big topic that we can delve deeper into more. Let me know what you guys think about the whole topic, flows versus Apex. It's always a conversation on LinkedIn. Every now and then there is a fight somewhere that like Apex is better, flows is better. Thank you, Nathaniel. I appreciate your kind words. Thank you, Mila, as well. Thank you, everyone. I'm conscious of time. I was planning to take another challenge, but I don't think I can complete this in 7 minutes. So let's if anybody has any question, then let me know. If there is no questions, then we can just wrap this up, and then I will resume these next time. I think there is a couple of additional challenges that are nice, and there is some tricks in there, and I like it. I haven't looked at all of them, and I'm constantly looking for use cases. I know I have a ton of use cases on my Flow course, but I don't want to use the same use cases again. I want to find new use cases. So if you can think of something, or if you face something in your work, share them with me. We can talk about flow limitations. I have a couple of videos on this as well, on the crash course on Apex Hours, and on my channel in the Flow course. This is a very important topic as well, limitations. If you have or are you suggesting that we cover limitations in a future video, or are you asking about limitations now? I can talk about limitations for the last couple of minutes. Thank you very much, Aya. Okay, so I can talk about limitations very quickly for the next couple of minutes. Generally, you want to be conscious of two limits, the DML and the SOQ limits. DML, and like, don't be deterred by the names, by the fancy names. DML stands for data manipulation language, and in the context of flows, these are create elements, update elements, and delete elements. These are DML, data manipulation language, and these are three elements. Every one of them, whenever it runs, it consumes one DML, and the limit is 150 DMLs per transaction. Like, we can't talk about limits without talking about transactions. So transactions can be a different topic. We can talk about this maybe next time. So think about it just like at the beginning of the logic and then the end of the logic. When does it start? When does it end? And then in between these two, then you are limited to 150 DML. If you run out of, once you reach 151, then you're gonna hit an error. The flow is going to crash. The other one is SOQL, which stands for Salesforce Object Query Language. And that is in the context of flows, that is the get element. And which is something that many people don't seem to realize, when you use an update element and then you filter the criteria, and you add a criteria filter, like the update element, and then here set filter conditions. When you do that, when you set conditions in here, you're using one SOQL in here. Like this section is using one SOQL, and then that section down here is performing the update. This is using one DML. So the one element, update element, can use one SOQL and one DML. If you retrieved a record and then you're performing an update on that record, do not set a filter condition on it. Use the one that you previously queried. Otherwise, you would be using two queries. I might have confused a little bit in here, but basically just use, try not to use this filter conditions unless you have to. We can talk about the use cases in here later. I'll answer this question first and then I'll resume, or maybe I'll just talk about one additional limit and then we can talk about limitations later. The one important limit is the CPU time, CPU time limit, and this is just basically the time it takes to process the logic. So lean towards simplicity as much as you can. If you think that a flow is getting complex, it's likely a design problem. Like, flows are not should not be complex. Apexes should not be complex. If there is complexity, it's very likely the design, like the objects and relationships from the beginning, were not designed properly, and hence we have to write complex logic to work with that. So we are running from a problem with another problem. CPU time means that if you, for example, loop through a collection, and inside the loop you do another loop, so you're doing two loops in one flow, in one transaction. This is taking a lot of processing, which takes more time, which approaches the CPU time limit. So the idea here for all of the limits is as follows: try to reduce DML, try to reduce SOQL, and try to reduce complexity. There are other limits, of course, but we can talk about them later. Do you have a video where you can use custom metadata or a custom object to assign account or case records based upon the data? Well, not exactly, but I do have some on using custom metadata for adjusting things in the flow. Like maybe one example is we have a calendar year and we have a fiscal year. Some organizations have some other different years, like school year, or maybe they have some other club year. We've seen these two before: a school year and a club year. Which is different. So they have like 4 different years, like a club year, a calendar year, a fiscal year, and a club year. Now, where do you host all of that? We can have calendar and fiscal. We know where those are. But then where do you have these school year and club year. So this is one of the places where I would put custom metadata or custom settings. It depends on what we're building. The custom metadata, I think you're gonna find one in my flow course. In my flow course, I can't remember. There is a video where I'm using custom metadata, but I don't remember which one it is. Feel free to send me the use case that you have, like the business use case, and I'm happy to either shoot a video and upload it to my YouTube channel, or send you a Loom recording of how I would do this, or maybe discuss next time. I'm conscious of everyone's time. Thank you all for today. I hope you found some value in here. I appreciate everyone. Thank you, and you all have a lovely day. Bye-bye.